Good afternoon and welcome to this afternoon's webinar held by Milner Browne in conjunction with Gradient Consulting. I'd like to welcome everybody to today's event. Just to set the scene, we all know that ERP is business management software that allows an organisation to integrate and control all facets of its operation, from sales to finance, through manufacturing to quality and human resources. And we know that forward-thinking companies use ERP systems to help them manage, organise, analyse, compete and grow. Now, Gradient Consulting, our guests today, are a highly regarded ERP consultancy providing businesses with practical and impartial advice on how to improve their bottom line through better use of ERP and business information systems. Established in 1997, Gradient have built up a formidable reputation for helping companies select, implement, and work better with their information systems. And it's my pleasure today to welcome Mike Smith, who is Director of Gradient Consulting. To set the scene, Mike has started life working in the city, but subsequently spent over 25 years running performance and profitability improvement projects, mainly within manufacturing and logistics centres. In addition, Mike also has a wealth of experience in warehousing, having been involved at a senior level in developing WMS systems. Mike is a keen singer with the RSNO, and also, as a proud Scotsman, likes to get onto the golf course from time to time and improve his swing. So without further ado, I'd just like to transfer over to Mike, and he will be more than delighted to present to you some key pointers on how to plan an ERP project effectively. Thank you, Mike.
Welcome to all of you to this, the first of 3 webinars, which are a series going to be talking about how to prepare and plan for a new ERP and why you might want to prepare and plan, how to execute the implementation, and latterly, how to continue improvement after go live. But this first one is to do with how to plan an ERP project. Now, I'm working on the basis that everybody who is here today has already gone through the exercise of working out if they actually need to upgrade their systems or buy a new ERP and implement that. That's a separate subject in its own right, but I'm working on the basis that people on the other end of this may well have a number of spreadsheets that staff are using to cope. They've created their own or had created spreadsheets so they can enter and refer to information. You've got little databases popping up everywhere to find information they need as a coping mechanism. Time being spent to update these various systems, perhaps entering the same information twice or 3 times, maybe a number of versions of the truth out there, and so on and so on and so on. So one way or another, you've said, all right, let's look at what we need to do to put in a new ERP. So what are the issues in preparation? And the game plan is to survive and thrive as opposed to struggle and strive. So what are the basic requirements? And here you've really got to be honest with yourselves. So what's the benchmark? You're wanting to identify the benefits and functions that you're actually wanting to achieve out of a system. In other words, know why you're going into it. You might say to yourself, well, I want to be better than I am. And that's all very fair, but you really want to identify clearly what benefits and functions you want to do. Secondly, you want to quantify that. You want to be able to say, what does that mean to me? Is it worth £100 to me? Is it worth £100,000 to me? Is it worth £1 million to me? Because if you don't know what the value is out of what you're wanting to do, how can you go to the board? You may be the board, and say, you know what, I want to spend 150,000 on a new system. I want to spend £250,000 implementing a new system, and so on. What am I going to get out of it? When you implement a new system, I'm working on the basis that you don't just want to mimic what you're currently doing today. For various reasons, you want to improve the workflow processes you're doing in the business. You want to change how you're doing certain things. So you're not looking for a system to just mimic what you're currently doing. You're looking for a system to mimic what you want to be doing tomorrow. So if you're going to change how you're working, you need to establish what needs to change to deliver the benefits, or you just risk keeping on doing what you've always done. And the other benchmark is to get buy-in and sign-off on the achievable benefits at the highest levels, or be doomed to be undermined. Sadly, I've seen that happen again and again and again. Okay, why do we want to do this? Why do we want to identify the benefits, quantify, establish the needs to change, get buy-in? Why do we do it? Because, and this may come as a surprise, right? First off, it's important you find software that's capable to cover the ways your company needs to work and interact with your clients and suppliers. But once you do that, the software is no longer your sole focus. Believe it or not, 80% of the success of your implementation is how you implement it. That's to do with the project and change planning. How the execution of the architecture you designed within it aligns to your business and its aims. And I'll come back later to what that actually means. And the last thing is the quality of the people you use to execute. Okay. Now, this looks negative. I don't mean it to be, but we need to look at the criteria for failure, because until you understand that, you don't know the criteria for success. Sadly, failure in implementing an ERP is more common than you might expect. A major American consultancy recently did work and identified more than 72% could be seen as failed projects. But of course, few major companies will actually go back to their board and say, you know, that 5 million quid we spent, we kind of wasted our money. That's not really something people tend to do. So what do we mean by failure? Well, for example, the project costing more than was promised, or it taking longer than was promised, or not delivering the benefits that were promised. Therefore, the project's not benefiting the business as promised. Now, I don't know how many of you are aware of the concept of black swan. That is something which crawls out of the woodwork that nobody actually expected or planned for, but it's going to cost you. Now, doing it wrong can be costly. This is a bit of a busy slide, and I apologize for that. If you think of the black in the background as I know it's not truly a normal distribution curve because the two tails are not equal-sided, but believe it or not, the average is 27% cost overrun. And something like 15% go over 50% overrun. So how do we avoid these things? Well, first off, why is it happening? This is a bit of levity, but it is serious. Waste, fraud, lies, and basic cluelessness. Those are bold words, but they are seen as the key drivers. But another way of looking at it is poor leadership, resource deprivation. What do I mean by that? I mean, I can think of a project that I was involved in about 5 years ago with a major food company who shall remain completely nameless. But consistently, the vendor would come in prepared to do the work that was planned on the project plan and be told, well, we haven't actually been able to do that yet because we've been busy and we had to call people off to do this or do that or do the other. And then there was surprise when the vendor turned around and said, well, you know what? We've spent 12 man days preparing for this, and you're not here. So we're going to have to charge you. And now we're going to have to do it again. Political manoeuvring. Oh yes, we will absolutely be right behind you. We will work on this. We will make this happen. And then privately in the individual departments, it's like hell we will. We'll play lip service, but we won't actually do it. So it sadly is more often a human failure than a failure in the software. Of course, having said that, you do have to choose the most appropriate and most suitable software in the first place. But once you've found software that seems to be capable of what you need it to do, has the tailoring ability to be able to do the nuances that you need to do, then everything else is down to how you implement it and the things that you actually want it to do for you. So, what does it mean? It means a lack of real identified needs and benefits, a lack of a real statement of requirements, because if you can't tell the vendors what you want clearly and in detail, how can they deliver well? Project creep, otherwise known as making up as you go along. So you decide this is what we're going to do up front, and then 4 months along, oh, hang on, I wonder if we could do this with it. Yes, says the vendor. Okay, that would be a good idea. Can we do that? Yeah. But of course, they've been in the background and spending 4 months putting together the background architecture of the software to suit what you originally wanted to do. And it may be the case that the changes you're now wanting to put in place means that some of the architecture work they did in the background needs to be unpicked and then redone. And then no clear criteria for success. So you need to know at what point you're saying, that's worked. Is it the first time you produce an invoice? Is it the first time that you actually get products, goods in your warehouse, put away, picked, and sent out the door completely paperless? Is it the first time that you actually have that interface with your supplier and it just happens in the background? So what is it you're actually, at what point are you saying, yep, we can tick that box, it's doing what we want it to do for the first phase? There may be ideas that you subsequently think that's a good idea, but write them down separately and review them as a second phase once the first phase has been done. Okay, the good news is failure does not need to happen. There are things you can do to completely avoid the real problems that are out there. You've seen this before. Identify, I will go into a bit more detail. Identify benefits and functions, what we want to achieve, quantify it, establish what needs to change, and get buy-in. What does that mean? Well, you want to first off define the as-is at a level perhaps more detailed than you might expect. So what we're saying there is, what do we do now? Department by department, function by function, area by area. How do the guys and girls on the ground doing the job do what they do? What is it that they do? Get that written up, mapped out, understand it. But not necessarily what's on the SOP that's filed away in a drawer somewhere, but actually what people are doing at the coalface. And that might mean going to people and saying, you know what, I want you to tell me the truth of what you do. There's going to be no comeback. We're not going to take you off into a darkened room and say, how dare you not follow the procedures of this company. But we do want to know exactly what you do. So if it's the case, going back to the warehouse, on goods in, whoever is doing the goods in has a little notebook where they write the serial numbers, has a little database where they're putting in the best before ends, has a little spreadsheet where they put in where they've put things. You need to know these things. If in finance somebody's got a separate little spreadsheet that they use for all purchase orders below 50 quid, you need to know these things. all the little spreadsheets, all the little databases, all the little notebooks, all the little phone calls to somebody else sort of saying, what do you make of this? Okay, we'll do it that way. You need to know these things. So define the as is at a level more detailed than you might expect. Once you've done that, create a gap analysis between what you're doing in reality and what you could be doing if you lost the spreadsheets and databases. So it's the economist sitting on a rock and saying, assuming a can opener. Forget what, this is the difficult bit, forget what you think you can and can't do. Just try and imagine life without the spreadsheets and databases and what have you, and say, okay, if it was the case that we didn't actually have to write this stuff up, and we could actually, for example, just scan the stuff into the warehouse and gather all the detail information we need, we were able to do complete batch number control. We were able to completely do lot number control all the way through the production process. We were able to, whether we've got a good bill of materials or not, allocate product to a work order, whatever it is that we're doing. If we were able to do it without the Achenkach, without the paper handling, without the writing on paper, what would it mean in terms of improvement, in terms of time availability for people to do other more useful things in the business? But more importantly, what would it actually mean in terms of the process if, when you wrote out the as-is with all the little boxes saying we do this and then we do that and then we make these choices, and once we made these choices we do that, if it was smoothed out and saying, you know what, we could actually go straight from there to there and cut all this stuff out. Do a gap analysis, write that up, and work out what changes are implied in terms of how people actually work day to day. In the background, you don't need to do it, for the purpose of finding your ERP in the first place, but in the background, recognize that process change may need to happen and start thinking of how you can make it happen, what training might need to be done, what communications might need to be done with people, because the first thing they're going to do is say, my mortgage depends on me doing all this. If you take all this away, where's my job? And get business sign-off. Create a statement of requirements that for each functional area details and questions the things that make you unique. Now what that means is, don't fill the statement of requirements with all the stuff that's just like everyone else. You're not trying to create a 120-page document that's dropped straight off the internet. What you're trying to do is do a proper discovery and just write up in the statement of requirements the things that make you different, the things that you find awkward. If an ERP can't hold a customer record and produce an invoice, it shouldn't be there. But on the other hand, again, sadly, sorry, back to the warehouse, if it was the case that if on goods in, if you're taking goods in from goods from this supplier, you have to A, collect the best before ends, B, you've actually got to do some quality assurance, whether visual or otherwise, before it can be picked and used. And until that time, it's got to be put in quarantine, and then it goes to QA, and QA do whatever tests they're going to do. And then once they've come back to you and said, yeah, you know what, that batch is okay, then it automatically reassigns it from quarantine to being okay and ready to be picked. That sort of thing. You're saying, whatever your system does, guys, you must be able to do this. But do that for everything that you find awkward, that makes you different. Okay, the other thing is, and the other good news is, quite often when we're involved doing this, we're in the background having a look and seeing what opportunities there are for improvements in the way people are doing things that actually got nothing to do with an ERP and don't depend on an ERP being implemented. Now, you might say, who is this arrogant geezer? What makes him think he can know better how we might work. We've been doing this for 30 years. The thing is, it's a bit of a privilege if you can go into a company completely agnostic. You don't know what questions can't be asked. You don't know what can't be done. You don't know this was tried 8 years ago and it didn't work then. So you're able to ask the daft questions. And you're able to, it's a terrible cliche, so forgive me, think outside the box. And it's great. So you can go along and say, very carefully, of course, because you don't want to insult anybody. You absolutely don't want to, tread on toes and make people feel daft, because that's absolutely not what it's about. But you might and often do find things that says, you know what, you can actually save 10% of your time just doing this. You could implement it on Monday. Great, let's go and do it. But still do the statement of requirements. Okay, a third step. The people who are involved in this, select them on ability, not because they're somebody's friend or because they've got the functional hat on that means they should be there. Make sure you've got people who are actually good people, whoever they are. And the other thing is, be aware that this, when you do come to implementation, and that's the next webinar, it's not a part-time job. It's not something that we, Jesse, down in administration can do for a couple of hours a week. This will take serious work, and it will take people out of what they're doing for a period of time, effectively for a period of time. Right, design the system architecture selection using any process changes implied but preferred to be. Okay, what's system architecture? Typically, modern ERPs have got vast amounts of functionality and capability within them. And, SAP Business One is one such. And Milner Browne have written a number of applications to sit alongside and absolutely hook in to do various other things. They're not alone. But the thing is, these systems got a lot of capability of tailoring. This is not writing something as a programmer writes things. This is the ability to use what's called business rules to actually define how a function or a process will work in the background. And you'd be amazed at just how much flexibility there is within a modern ERP. For example, if somebody was in procurement and they're saying, all right, if we want to buy something that's up to 100 quid, I can sign it off. If it's between 100 quid and 1,000 quid, it needs to automatically be routed to John. He can sign it off. If it's between 1,000 quid and 10,000 quid, it's got to be rerouted to Jean. She can sign it off. If it's over 10,000 quid, it's got to go to the financial director. They sign off. Those detailed rules can amazingly easily be put in the background so that all that happens is that somebody decides they're going to buy something, or MRP has a number of suggestions for you, or however you work out what it is you're going to buy, whether you're buying something for a project or whatever. These rules automatically kick in and automatically do what ought to be done. I could give you many such examples, but that's just one such. So you're not looking for software that's been pre-programmed with those steps in it. You're looking for software that's capable of putting in things like approvals, and the detailed rules can actually just be, I hope they don't shoot me for saying in 5 minutes, but that sort of thing just be put in. It doesn't involve a programmer, something the implementation team can do. Okay, so that's what's called system architecture. But when you're putting together all the detailed things that you actually want the system to do for you inside the business, in the background, all sorts of rules to do with the system architecture are implied by the things that you are wanting the system to do. And that's why it's so important to actually put that together at a detailed level, especially when it concerns the things that make you as a business different. Okay, make sure business managers understand why change is happening and what it means. So you've got to do communication. And that's not from on high telling the people down below that this is what you're going to do, because that's the best way of making sure it doesn't happen. So you've got to involve people. Plan the project management and the chess moves for change well in advance. We will come to that in more detail when it comes to the implementation end. But even in this business, when this end of it, when you're planning to actually buy the ERP in the first place and select the correct ERP, you do need to have in the back of your mind what the plan to go live is likely to be. You want to start in outline putting that together before you even sign a contract with a vendor. So plan the project management and be aware of the sort of chess moves that may need to go on within the business for change, so that the way you're working now needs to keep going, because you're still running the company you're running and you're still doing what you do day to day. And in the background, you're implementing or going to be implement this thing, which is going to brick wall the changes you're putting in place. So the shape of the company at the end of the implementation process is going to be very different from the shape of the company as now. And I would not be doing you any favors if I kidded on otherwise. So there it is. Have a process in place to realize the change in benefits, so you can make sure that the things that you planned to get by quantifying the benefits and saying, you know what, this is going to improve my bottom line by £250,000. This is going to reduce my unit cost of manufacture by 50p, £1, £2, £5 a unit. This is going to make me more competitive to the Far East. This is going to allow me, whatever it is. Have a process in place to make sure these things happen. There's a little internal function funnel for you. So you've got plan, reach, act, convert, and engage. And on the right, you've got the detail elements of what that means. So recognize possible requirement for process analysis. Find out the as-is. Identify the opportunities that are available to you. That's the gap analysis. Work out how you're going to communicate that vision to empower people and not frighten them to death. Secure the short-term wins if you find them. And I'll be honest with you, I've never not found them. Consolidate and move on. Establish the urgency so that the momentum in your project keeps going and it doesn't suddenly die a death because somebody woke up one morning and decided to turn in a different direction. Make sure that it just keeps going. And if you do come across issues, and you will, just evolve, fix, and develop those issues. Nobody can dream everything up absolutely correctly on the first day. It doesn't work like that. So wrapping up, the overall strategic vision. Know what you want to achieve. Have senior management support. Be clear in your detailed requirements. Have a buy-in. Ensure that you see the detail covered that makes you different. So if there are things in parts of your business that you say, you know what, that's awkward, that's tricky, that really causes us pain, hassle, time, effort, make sure that's the detail that's covered. And then prepare to plan, but that's next time. So Next time, we'll talk about how to execute. So success needs the alignment of all the three elements of software, the method, that's how you're going to implement project management, change management, the actual execution of those plans, and the cast, which is the people that you're going to involve in doing it. And just warn you, often when people are at this stage of the game, the focus is on the software. This is wrong. You do need to focus on the software briefly so that you actually make sure that you select the right one. But the real work is making sure that you understand what it is that you actually need from the system. And then once you've found decent software, work out how best you're going to implement it, realize the dreams of what and ambitions of what you want to achieve, execute it and make sure it happens. So the elements for next time is going to be plan and arrange resources, prepare for disruption. Have we got strategic vision and leadership? Have we got senior management support as a guiding coalition? So you're not sort of working in the background thinking, we don't actually have the support from the board here. You may think that would never happen. Seen it. Have we a project champion who is permanent, senior, and able to make decisions, i.e. not a part-time job? Is there effective project management? Is there change management plans and projections? Can we plot progress? Is there a recognition that a measure of business process re-engineering may take place? So it doesn't come as a surprise to anybody that the actual ways people go about doing certain things is now different. And then finally, the third webinar, recognize that once you do go live, that's not the end of it. You can continue improving and go into a continuous improvement and virtuous circle cycle that just helps the company move forward and forward and forward. It really can work. There we are. And I thank you very much for that. It's very much a case of, have you got any thoughts, questions? If you have, please tell me. Has it been worthwhile? Has that triggered any thoughts in you? Hello?
Mike, can you hear me? It's Darren speaking. Hello there.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Mike. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Wonderful. Okay, there are some questions that have come through the chat function. I'm just actually reading through those as we speak. One of the questions was really to do with the next scheduled webinars. So just in answer to that, we are running several of the webinars in conjunction with Mike and Gradient over the coming weeks and months. And what we plan to do is to promote those via email, our website, www.milnerbrown.com, and also to promote those through various social media, whether it's LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and a number of other channels. So please look out for those additional dates as and when they're promoted, but we plan to run this hopefully as a fairly regular event, and to ensure that we can follow on from the initial interest that no doubt Mike's insight has generated, and ensure that you're in a position to understand better moving forwards how ERP can help your businesses. Mike, was there any further thoughts from your end at all?
Not so much thoughts, it's more a case of, are there any questions? Because, of course, I'm sitting here doing my thing. I can't see anybody. I can't see anybody's eyes. I'm not getting any visual cues. I don't know if people are nodding and going, yeah, I can do it. Or whether they're going, what, I need you to from. So, you know,
That's
Hence,
understandable. You have my sympathy. I'm quite used to this scenario, Mike. So just to shout up, we've got a question from Nikki, basically saying, is it possible to re-show the first step slide, please? I don't know if you can toggle back on your presentation
oh
at all.
gosh, yes, of course can. Yes, 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 certainly. Bear with me. I'm just going to go back to it just now. Easiest way is to end show and then just go to that slide. Right. 1 second, nearly there. Yeah, I've got the first step slide, and then I've got the second step slide, which might be what she means. But I've got the first slide. I don't know if you want to pass it back to me.
You should still be in control there, Mike. That's fine. You can control the screen.
Can you still see it, can you?
Correct.
Okay. A first step. This was the identify benefits and functions, quantify the benefits, just at a high level establish what needs to change to deliver the benefits, and then get buy-in and sign off on that. Now, in order to identify, I mean, you can do that kind of talking round a table, but if you want to get into the detail of what that might be, you might be getting into starting to define the as is at a level perhaps more detail than you might expect. But you don't need to, if you're quantifying the benefits just up front, let me go back to previous, sorry. If you're identifying the benefits and functions at a high level and quantifying it, you don't need to go totally into the detail of the as-is in order to be able to do that. But it really is useful to, as a first step, have a good idea what you want to achieve out of it. You know, I want to get rid of all these spreadsheets. I want to get rid of all these databases, if any. I want to get rid of all the notebooks. I want to, you know, get rid of the need to phone the people who do the estimating 5 times a day. I want to get rid of the need of, if I'm doing sales for the business, having to constantly walk down to the production floor and talk with the production manager in order to find out how my client's last order is getting on, because my next order might depend on it. You know, what do I want? What sort of visibility do I need across the business? All these things you can sort of discuss and think about internally without going into the detail of how my as-is working and, you know, doing the gap analysis and working out how the 2B might be. But just start with, all right, how would I like to be? How would I like to spend my day, rather than just doing what I currently do? There's one company who shall remain nameless. They are a manufacturer. The actual sales, the 2 guys who run the sales department, literally go down to the production 4 or 5 times a day, currently, 4 or 5 times a day, in order to just find out what, you know, work orders are going through, what products going through, when particular orders for their clients are likely to be ready, because in one case they're late, or in another case a client's phoned up and saying, you know what, I actually, instead of having this a week on Monday, I actually need it next Tuesday. Is that feasible? And because there's no visibility, absolutely no visibility at all. So it's whatever the issues are within your business, just have a look in terms of what do we want to achieve at high level, quantify that, and then say that's worth doing, and then go on to the rest. Once you've decided this is how we would like to be, and by God, it's worth it. I hope that's helpful.
Thank you, Mike. In fact, I've had a couple of comments and questions come through. So one from Nick, thank you, that was really helpful. And again from Neil, thanks for an interesting presentation there, Mike. So I think it's been a valuable experience, definitely. Unless there's any other questions or comments, I will wrap up the broadcast for this afternoon. As I've mentioned already, the series is a regular occurrence, and all I would say is please feel free to look out for further emails from Milner Browne in connection with forthcoming scheduled webinars. We promote those on our own Milner Browne website, as well as through social media and emails. So please look out for the next instalment, and there will be recording available if you require of the webinar after the event. So thank you very much, Mike, for your time this afternoon. I've found it very interesting and very valuable, and I'm sure the audience feel the same. So thank you very much for your time and assistance. It's been a pleasure working with you. Thanks, everybody, and have a great day. All the best to you. Bye-bye.